Am I the only one feeling a bit of a void, a slight emptiness? For 5.5 years, we had bombast, we had a bit of wild, we had in your face, and it's all gone, all muted. And now, what do we have? We have Mr. Rogers.
We're all God's children. We should treat each other as we would like to be treated ourselves. And this is time to act, and this time to act is because it's what the core values of this nation call us to do. And I believe the vast majority of Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, share these values and want us to act as well.
That sounds beautiful. But then Joe goes into Mr. President goes into some detail. And the detail he's talking about isn't kinder and gentler. It's radical. He's talking not about equality, but about equity. We'll go into what that means in a little bit, but a little bit more from President Biden today.
Just imagine if instead of denying millions of Americans the ability to own a home and build generational wealth, we made it possible for them to buy a home, their first home, and began to build equity to provide for their families and send their children off to school. Does anyone doubt that the whole nation would be better off?
Equity in your home is great, but then he goes on to talk about racial equity. And that's where it gets a little interesting. And by the way, opening up the housing market didn't work out too great a while back. Anybody remember the fallout? Anyway, more from Joe about racial equity.
Racial equity, not just an issue for any one department of government. It has to be the business of the whole of government. That's why I issued, on one of the first days, my whole of government executive order that will, for the first time, advance equity for all throughout our federal policies and institutions.
All right, we know equality, but equity gets a little bit dicey. And he didn't actually go into much detail as to what equity is. Here's one definition from Andrew Sullivan. Equitable treatment means we all end up in the same place. That's equality of outcomes enforced by the government. They used to call that communism. Equality versus equity. We'll be talking about it throughout the show. But how's this all going to be enforced?
And I've asked Ambassador Susan Rice to lead the administration's charge through the White House and Domestic Policy Council, because I know she'll see it through.
Yikes, Susan Rice, most famous for lying about Benghazi and all the Sunday shows. Remember her? National Security Advisor to President Obama. All right, but more on the situation that is America. Joe, time and time again, called us a systemically racist place. Do you think America is systemically racist? I don't. I don't think folks in the military join the military to defend a systemically racist country. More from the president.
Today, I'm directing federal agencies to combat resurgence of xenophobia, particularly against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders that we've seen skyrocket during this pandemic.
I read the newspaper too. Have you seen those kinds of issues skyrocket? In the most negative mythology that the left drives, yeah, it probably exists in your head, but that's not the country we live in, is it? More.
In the weeks ahead, I'll be reaffirming the federal government's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, building on the work we started in the Obama-Biden administration. That's why I'm rescinding the previous administration's harmful ban on diversity and sensitivity training and abolish the offensive counterfactual 1776 Commission.
1776 Commission was the commission that said America was not a force for evil. And I understand that's not very cool in our woke left society. But Joe thinks that possibly talking about race all day is going to make us a more unified country somehow.
I'll close with this. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. And the simple truth is, our soul will be troubled as long as systemic racism is allowed to persist.
Systemic racism is a phrase Joe Biden probably never uttered until he started running for president in, when the heck was that? 2 years ago. I don't know. I just don't think this is a recipe to bring what he talked about also during the campaign. Remember, unity? He brought it up again at the inauguration in a pretty powerful way.
Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause.
His whole soul is in it. His whole soul is into uniting this country. It looks to me like Joe basically is along for the ride. He doesn't seem to be driving this White House because the President Biden I'm seeing right now looks nothing like the Senator Biden that I grew up with.
And I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
That's the Joe Biden that I grew up with. That's the one I know when he got caught lying the first time he ran for president. Not just lying once, like lying basically every time he opened his mouth. Look, I'm all for unity, and maybe deep down somewhere, Joe Biden is too. And I'll say it again. Here's the recipe for unity right now. If President Biden were to do this, it would be a total game changer for our country. President Biden, come out and call for Democrats on Capitol Hill to drop the impeachment. Everybody knows this is a farce, and everybody knows it's divisive. Calling for that case to be thrown out, that could really unify us, and I'd be personally very, very impressed. Also, how about getting big tech off our back, huh? Again, these two things, if unity is more than just a line in your speech, President Biden, trust me on this one, it's a win-win, okay, for you and for the country. Impeachment. Whew. It's really happening. I thought, oh, no way, it can't, right? President Trump is out of there. Nope, they're really going forward with it.
And of course, the impeachment manager is now walking over to the Senate, where we will hear more of that article. Nora.
That's right, Nicole. They are being led by the House Clerk, Cheryl Johnson, and the acting House Sergeant of Arms, Timothy Blodgett, because, of course, the original Sergeant of Arms stepped down after the Capitol riot.
Wow. Very solemn. What a joke, all right? Give me a break. And by the way, look at all those people walking, what, 2 folders. There are 15 people delivering 2 folders. Is that typical swamp or what? I rigged up some special music. I think this is far more apropos than a bunch of anchors talking about how significant this is for the country. Who recognizes Hogan's Heroes? Folks, they don't even have the votes, and we know it's a sham, but look at how seriously they take it. And by the way, this costs money. We are paying for this. Wow. They are something else, aren't they? Hey, Senator Rand Paul has been on fire lately. He's trying to get this entire case thrown out. President Biden's not going to call for it. Well, we got a brave Republican on Capitol Hill who is calling nonsense on the whole charade.
Instead of doing the nation's work with their new majorities in the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. It's almost as if they have no ability to exist except in opposition to Donald Trump. Without him as their boogeyman, they might have to legislate and to actually convince Americans that their policy prescriptions are the right ones.
I like him a lot. And by the way, he's coming up in just a couple of minutes. You know, if they really do go through with this impeachment, it could enhance Donald Trump. Yep. There are some political experts who have been saying that. And by the way, spotted in Florida recently, Trump 2024 flags. Let's see there. Yep, that's 2024. And I would not count him out whatsoever. He's watching the situation, anxious to hear from him. Gosh, it's so terrible that he's off social media. Not his fault, of course. He has set up an office, a formal office of the former president, the 45th president. Let's take that full. This is the mission statement. The office will be responsible for managing President Trump's correspondence, public statements, appearances, and official activities to advance the interests of the United States and to carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. President Trump will always and forever be a champion of the American people. Wow, I like that. That's really kind of straightforward. And that's what he wants to do. Maybe in public office, doesn't rule that out, certainly. You know, a lot of these guys, they just want to cash in. They go from being not wealthy to very wealthy once they hold the ultimate office, right, President Obama? All right, back to that social media situation. Depriving Donald Trump of social media is a crime. It has to be. I remember, 2 or 3 years ago, it was considered illegal for the White House to block followers on Twitter who wrote hostile comments. If that was illegal, it's got to be illegal to keep him off of Twitter. I don't like it. If it's not illegal, it's fundamentally wrong. Consider this, the Wright brothers. They invented the airplane, okay? Can you imagine if only one company made airplanes and they decided who could fly and who couldn't based on whether they agreed with you politically? I mean, that's kind of the situation we have, keeping Donald Trump, the greatest social media warrior ever, off of social media. It's totally ridiculous. Anyway, the bombast, I'll tell you this. You know, we saw President Biden during the campaign, and we saw a version of him. He called for unity, and now we can see clearly he's not unifying. President Trump was the same person as candidate Trump as he was as President Trump. Now, maybe you don't like that, but he was the same person. He governed the way he campaigned. Very, very interesting. People in the swamp, they don't do that. You'll remember during the campaign, perhaps, that he called for, he promised to get rid of ISIS. ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It was a crisis when he started running for president, and he said, we're going to loosen the rules of engagement, and we're going to take ISIS out. And guess what? He did. And, you know, he never really got the credit for it. Isn't that interesting? But mainstream media just kind of stopped writing about ISIS. I made a prediction myself all the way back in the fall of 2015 that Donald Trump would make good on this promise. I had a vision 5.5 years ago that he would win. Anyway, it was at a Halloween party on an old TV show I was on, and I played Donald Trump. This was in the fall of 2015, and this is how I saw it playing out, Donald Trump and ISIS.
I'm talking about ISIS, the bad guys. You never hear about them anymore. You never hear about them. What did we do? We did it through a combination of bombs, brains, and making fun of them on Twitter.
It kind of worked. I improved since then, big time.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.